Well, so what did we learn about John McCain and Sarah Palin in the 2008 campaign? We're back with Time Magazine's Mark Halperin and the New York Magazine's John Heilemann. They're the authors of this fabulous new book, Game Change. Here's John McCain this morning, today on the Today Show, answering a question from Matt Lauer about whether his campaign fully vetted Sarah Palin before they picked her as VP. Let's listen.
And I'm not going to get into it.
But your comment that you just said, I wouldn't know, is somewhat surprising to me.
Well,
you were the presidential candidate.
Look, I wouldn't know what the sources are nor care. I do know that I'm proud of my campaign. I'm proud of Sarah Palin. I'm proud of the job that we did. And I will always be grateful for having her as my running mate and the support we got from millions of Americans. Okay?
Wow, you're laughing. Who's laughing the loudest there, Mark? John McCain comes across in your book, and I read the whole book, and it's great, as a man who was miserable almost from day one. What's with the Republican Party picking nominees way past when they should pick him? He should have been the nominee in 2000. He would have been a happy warrior. What was the misery factor about all three? He's always just miserable. And the language in this book, the F-bomb is dropped constantly. I mean, I'm not known to have used it. I don't like being caught using it, but let's face it, it's all through your book, Mark.
It's certainly
every candidate in this book prefers that word as his word of choice, it seems. Your thoughts?
Apparently there's a secret club in presidential candidates, and one of the things you learn at initiation is that word should be used as a noun, a verb, and a gerund whenever possible.
Well, that's an old Navy expression, by the way. I can't use it now, but Jack Kennedy, they used to talk about how Ben Bradley would talk about in World War II Navy in the South Pacific. They use it in every one of those word forms. Your thoughts now. I want to try with you, John Heilemann. John McCain, he's defending his choice now because he has to historically. I mean, George Herbert Walker Bush has to defend Dan Quayle. Once you make the choice, you're stuck. But it seems to me she doesn't know anything going into this campaign. Did they really have to tell her what the Korean Peninsula looks like and why there's a North and South Korea? Did they have to explain that to her?
Well, I think there was, Chris, when they chose Sarah Palin, McCain's people made an assumption. They chose her very hastily. We know that now. She was not vetted virtually at all. I mean, we say in the book that she got less vetting than an assistant secretary of agriculture would have gotten. John McCain, she was a virtual stranger to him. But they all assumed that she would be at least of average intelligence and of average grasp for a governor of national and international issues. It turned out that she was way, way below the mean. And the truth was, in Minneapolis, we have scenes in Game Change where she's being tutored. Steve Schmidt goes to her foreign policy tutors and says, you have a lot of work to do. She doesn't know anything. And they lay a map out in front of her on the table in the suite in St. Paul and start like a risk board, and they start going through, literally, giving her like a high school survey course. This is the First World War, and it led then to the Second World War, and then we had the Cold War. They go through all of that. As she goes up to Alaska on September 11th to do her first national interview with Charlie Gibson, the 2 days before, she does not understand really and can't really explain the difference between North and South Korea. She's still regularly saying that Saddam Hussein caused 9/11. The next day on September 11th, her son is about to ship off to Iraq. She can't really explain who America is fighting in Iraq. She doesn't know what the Federal Reserve Board does. That was the level of ignorance we're talking about. You and Mark have got to answer this profound question. How does the neoconservative right, the hawkish right, find such success in finding these empty vessels like her, like W, like Quayle? They find these empty vessels who know nothing about the world, nothing about foreign policy, who immediately begin to spout the neocon line. I read her book. It's full of that crap. Where do they find these people? They went on a cruise up there. When Crystal and Fred Barnes went on some cruise to Alaska, and they found her standing at the docks with an empty head saying, I'm willing to say what you want me to say. Answer me, please, Mark. You're a smart guy. How did we put these marriages from hell together? Well, empty heads, right-wing philosophy.
Chris, I'm going to
Phil's empty head.
I'm going to have to answer you by primarily saying I understand why you're confused. I see in Sarah Palin leadership qualities, and the country saw them, and we talk about them in Game Change, which have now projected forward, where she has a following. She sold a lot of books. She continues to sell a lot of books.
Right.
She has grassroots support. But the fascination that some neoconservatives have for her, it's not clear to me where it stands from, because she didn't have an agenda, a neoconservative agenda in Alaska, and she hasn't really been a leader of formulating ideas. So I'm as confused as you are as to what that affinity is based on.
Well, you know what it's based on? It's the Yogi Berra line, we're lost, but we're making good time. That's my favorite Yogi Berra-ism. And that's so she's making good time, but she's lost. Here's Palin talking about Barack Obama on the trail on October 5th of 2008. Let's listen.
This is not a man who sees America as you and I do. We see America as the greatest force for good in this world. I'm afraid this is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to work with a former domestic terrorist.
Unbelievable. You know, when she makes the snarky attacks, she does this rising of her voice to sea above high sea. Have you noticed that, John Heilemann, how she does that? When she gets into our sarcastic mode, she's really good at it. I mean, if that's what you mean by leadership, Mark, she's got it. If that's leadership, it's frightening. Your thoughts? What did you discover about her ability to lead without knowing?
Well, I'm not clear that there was anything that she demonstrated in terms of leadership at the 2008 campaign, and I would say that that clip you just showed, Chris, was right after the vice presidential debate. She had just survived her debate with Joe Biden. She came out with a new head of steam. She thought that she was renewed. She'd overcome the last hurdle, the last obstacle, and that was literally the moment when she started going rogue. And, you know, for the McCain people, their view at that point was that she had more or less blown all the opportunities they saw for her in terms of helping with the women's vote, the moderate vote, the independent vote. All she was at that point was a magnet for the base and a huge headache. They hoped that she would kind of fade into the background for the last month. They could ship her off to states where she might help with the base. But she wouldn't go away, and she consumed enormous amounts of energy and time on the part of the McCain staff. And in the end, they ended up worried that she was, in the end, unfit to be vice president.
How did this latest acquisition of Roger Ailes at Fox discover that Joe Biden's last name was O. Biden, Mark Halperin? How did she get into her head, O. Biden?
You know,
it'll be hard to be a commentator if you don't get the surnames right, but she's got to stop calling them that or people think she's crazy. Go ahead. O. Biden, where'd it come from?
Well, you know, during her debate prep, she was under a lot of pressure. We were reporting Game Change. She was under so much pressure that she fell into this blue funk, became, in the view of some advisors around her, catatonic and non-responsive. But one of the things that was happening to her was
problem there. Let's make her vice president of the United States, catatonic and non-responsive.
One of the things that happened was she kept calling Joe Biden in these debate rehearsals, O. Biden. Our sources were mixed. Some thought it was like Obama, O. Biden. Some thought it might have been an Irish thing. And in either case, they knew she was going to be held to a very tough standard. If she went into that debate and she said Saddam Hussein had caused 9/11, if she'd said, O. Biden, it would have been a problem. So they had to come up with some way that she could avoid that problem.
Okay, let's end this festivity with a little fight time. Now, John Heilemann, you're my close friend and colleague. Did Harry Reid know that he was going to be quoted after that interview you had with him in which he used the term about light-skinned African Americans and he used the word Negro? Did he know when he sat there with you guys that he would be quoted in your book saying what he did?
Chris, as with all the other interviews in our book, we have not spoken about who we've interviewed for the book, and we've not confirmed anywhere that we've spoken with Harry Reid for the book. So I'm not going to have much more to say about that, except to say that it's not clear to me how it is that if we had interviewed Harry Reid, it's not clear to me how what his view was about whether the conversation was, what the status of the conversation was, whether that's exculpatory in some way. I mean, what has upset people is that these are his views. As I say, we've not said whether
I'm only
we interviewed him or
asking you,
not.
John, you missed my question. It was really simple. It's not about what you used in the book or who you quoted. When you interviewed Harry Reid, did he know he would be quoted? Was it for quotation?
As I said, Chris, we haven't confirmed that we've interviewed Harry Reid, and so I have nothing else to say on that.
Well, I can confirm it. Let's go on. Let me try with you, Mark. Was Harry Reid, the majority leader, aware that you could tape and use what he said in the interview you had with him? Or was he under some other knowledge, some other belief?
Chris, as your friend Haley Barber says, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. I heard John's answer, and it's the same answer as mine. We're just not talking about it because we thought it was important in doing the book, Chris, to give everybody who we talked to confidence that we'd stand by the rules that we set when we interviewed them. We did that with everyone we interviewed in the book.
So when he said in the book, according to your attribution, he said privately later, or later privately, that you're not even admitting that that was to you guys.
We're not talking about what we did to who we interviewed for the book.
So this is where it's going to stand. You never had an interview with Harry Reid.
Well, we're just not saying whether we did or not. Because, again, we're not doing it to be cute. We're not doing it out of some false sense of responsibility or not. We're doing it because we promised all of our sources the same thing.
Here's the problem. If he was quoted by you guys, and you're not saying you quoted him, there must be some reason why you're not saying you quoted him if you did. Is there a reason? John, would there be a reason why a reporter would quote someone and not say they quoted him?
As I said,
unless there was a ground rule that said you weren't going to quote him.
As I said,
what other reason could there be?
As I said, Chris, you are like a dog on a bone here. But we've been trying to be steadfast with all. We've done more than 300 interviews with more than 200 people. We made promises to everybody, and we're going to keep them.
Okay, well, when you change your mind about the attribution, let me know, because ground rules are ground rules. Anyway, hell of a book. I love reading every page of it. Everybody loves politics who watches this show should read this book. We'll argue about ground rules later. Mark Halperin, John Heilemann, I have great respect for your work. Great work here. The name of the game is Game Changer. May you knock Going Rogue off the top of the bestseller list.